Welcome to the Real Construction Owners Podcast. Today we have a special guest, Brian Estes, the owner of the Estus Group, who specializes in commercial investments, syndications, and management. We'll be discussing principles and practices to streamline your daily business, to teach contractors how to duplicate themselves and become better as business people. If you're a contractor or an investor, you're going to want to learn these investing strategies. This podcast is brought to you by federalconstructionuniversity.com. It's a course for contractors and entrepreneurs teaching you how to build wealth through winning government construction contracts as well as procurement contracts. The government, when they want to buy something, they have to get qualified bidders to bid on these deals. And if you know how to bid them and win them and be the middleman, you can get projects done across the nation, projects that make you anywhere $50,000 to $100,000. One of our members made it $1 million on one contract. So if that interests you, if you're a fan of winning highly profitable contracts, whether it be in construction or procurement where you supply the government with a bunch of lumber or you supply the government with a bunch of wire, then you're going to really enjoy this program. Check out the link in the description below. I have a 6-day free training for you. I also have 80% off my book, Federal Construction Contract Simplified. So check that out in the link below. Let's get started. Welcome to the Real Construction Owners Podcast, where we interview real construction owners and businessmen who are leading the way, teaching you how to go from being a stressed out operator to a thriving business owner. Today, we have a friend and expert in business, Brian Estes. He's the owner of the Estus Group, and he specializes in commercial investments, commercial syndications, and commercial management. I know what you're thinking. You're a contractor. You're saying to yourself, what can I learn from this? But this man has a wealth of knowledge of streamlining your daily business principles and practices. So stay tuned. That's it, Brian. How you doing today, bud?
I'm great, man. I appreciate the opportunity to be on this podcast, and I hope all your listeners have can learn a lot from it. I don't know. I never feel like I am the person that's got all the answers, but I can assure you I've struggled through a lot of things enough to hopefully be able to give some people support.
You know, that's what it's about. Like I do this to first and foremost learn for myself from wiser, more successful people who have a higher net worth. Because we are the sum average of the 5 people we surround ourselves. And if we're always just hanging out with our laborers or the administrator in our office or our wife and kids, there's nothing wrong with that. We are only going to go so high. I want to be the dumbest guy in the and that's why I've had you on the call today. Because I know for a fact you have a higher net worth than me and you're crushing it. So before we go into the goods and teach our contractors processes, how they can duplicate themselves and become better business people, before we go into all that, if you could share your story and do not be afraid to brag a little bit. I want you to tell us and our audience why we should listen to you, Brian.
Okay. Well, I'll just give you kind of a 3 or 4 minute rundown of kind of how I got to where I am today. My father owned a small insurance agency, and he dabbled with residential, really low-end type properties. And so kind of in high school and college, I did a lot of the renovation of his properties. I made good money, honestly. Always had plenty of money in high school, and he probably paid me a lot less than what anybody else got paid, but I still got paid more than working at McDonald's or any of the other franchises. But got into college, decided that real estate wasn't for me, so I majored in accounting and did that after school for about 2.5 years, and realized that corporate life was not for me at all. Ordered a Carlton Sheets, just hook, line, and sinker, saw it on there. I thought, you know what, maybe I do like real estate. And even though I had a father in real estate, I felt like I had to kind of prove myself. So off I went, decided I was going to start buying houses. And even while I had my accounting job, I started buying some very small, just rundown houses, doing a lot of the work myself. Anyway, fast forward about 2 more years, I finally quit my accounting job, and MAI appraiser called me and said, hey, I see that you really want to get into commercial real estate, and you're already doing it, and I know you've got an accounting degree. Why don't you come on with me and learn how to be a commercial appraiser? So that really kind of opened my world up beyond just buying house. And so I saw a world that I didn't even understand, and got a lot of practical value in underwriting commercial and development real estate projects. And so started doing that as my full-time job instead of accounting. But on the side, I still bought and flipped probably 400 homes. And by that time, I think I owned about 78, 79 rental homes. And after a couple of years of being a commercial appraiser, I sold everything I owned and converted everything into commercial. And so I started buying shopping centers and office buildings, and I would buy half-empty shopping center and start cutting it up and filling it up with smaller tenants. So anyway, and that kind of led me to the two businesses that I have now, because I started realizing after I converted all my capital and equity into commercial projects, I started a management company. Then I hired a leasing agent, then I hired, a controller, and then people were like, well, hey, you already own your real estate. Why don't you manage my real estate? One of the things I've learned about being in the real estate business, and really any kind of business, if you're an entrepreneur, is that you never seem to go in a straight line. One opportunity always leads to another opportunity, and then that opportunity leads you to something different. So I find that rarely does anyone get into real estate and stick to one thing and last in that one position for 50 years.
That's impressive, man. You went down the school of hard knocks. Even though you're educated, you still put your boots on the ground, you did the labor, and you used your daily money to invest in real estate. And from there, you said you flipped over 400 homes. At one point, you had over 78 doors, getting monthly passive income, living pretty passive, I'm sure. And then you decided to sell it all and get into the big whales, the big deals, the triple net leases, the commercial deals. What are the challenges that a single family investor who is just buying a house or two a year, who wants to get into buying like a commercial location and have multiple tenants, what are the challenges that they're going to face going into that?
Well, the first thing is the down payment. I don't think there's any question that, you're buying $500,000 to $1 million commercial property where you need $150,000 to $250,000 of down payment money. And I would have never had that kind of equity to put down if I had not started in the residential side first, because I was able to buy, a $25,000 or a $50,000 house, and I scraped together $10,000 and put some of the construction and all the supplies on my credit cards and all that kind of stuff. And I lived alone. I don't think there's any question. I think most people who started with and I had a decent income. I didn't have a great income, but I had a decent income. And but I also fell in that trap like everybody else does. My wife and I, when we got married, we bought a nice house, not an extravagant house, but a nice house. We had to go buy a car, and we had a car note. So even though I had a decent income, we still had bills to pay, and it wasn't as much discretionary income as I would have wanted. But I made do with what I had, and I started where I could. And I think that's the key. Start where you can. And then it just started snowballing. And because I was buying rundown houses and putting a lot of sweat equity in, I was able to build a lot of equity in my first 3, 4, 5 years. Whereas in commercial, even though you may find a really good deal in commercial where there's some upside, it's still a lot harder to get into without making a significant down payment. And a lot of people from the residential side of the business don't understand that when you go take your banker a phenomenal opportunity and you show him that it's vacant, the first thing in the banker's mind is, how are you going to pay for this? Because you've got no income. So no income from the tenant. So even though you may find a really good deal, you may have to put more equity in that good deal than it would be if you bought a 100% occupied office building or a shopping center or a 16-door small apartment deal, because debt coverage ratio and covering debt service and all that starts really mattering to the banks on the bigger deals. Whereas I can go buy a $150,000 house and tell them I'm buying it for $150,000 and it's worth $350,000 when I fix it up, and I've got the repair money. That's a little less concerning than it would be buying a 40% occupied shopping center. The first thing that goes to their mind is, how are you going to cover debt service with this little bit of income? So those are the hurdles. So,
and that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. A lot of contractors are perfectly suited to become investors. And that's the purpose of the Real Construction Owners podcast. I want to teach them how to build wealth using government contracts and making their business more streamlined, utilizing the things that I've learned by also inviting people like yourself and teach them how to get out of the rat race of having to do all the work and eventually have a team that does the work. And then lastly, have real estate as their nest egg that pays them passively every month. So talk to our audience about how contractors are just a natural fit to be investors.
Sure. Well, two ways in my mind. Number one, you're kind of already in the property maintenance / management business, right? We may not think of it that way, but a good part of what we do, we manage about 1.5 million square feet of commercial space, commercial industrial, and then we manage about 1,400 apartment units across Mississippi and the Gulf South. And a big part of what we do is the maintenance side. We just converted an extended stay into a multifamily property. Didn't require a lot of interior moving walls, but man, just the place was a mess. And so a big part of what we did was construction oversight / construction management. So I think construction owners are probably more in the real estate / management business than they really believe. Secondly is that I can't tell you how many more deals I would have done earlier in my life if I could have partnered with a contractor or someone who knew about construction, because either the project was just too risky from a construction oversight standpoint, and or the development just didn't feel right because I was too scared to get too knee deep into the construction side, and it could blow my whole budget. So I think if I'm a construction owner, I think I'm looking to possibly JV with other real estate guys that maybe are a little bit light on the construction side. And I'll be honest with you, I still consider myself light on the construction management side. So even
but think about what you just said, man. You've got thousands of buildings and doors that you're managing, but at the same time, even though you're a little light on the construction side, you have the knowledge. So contractors, if you're listening in and you are in Mississippi and I think you're Florida and Alabama or whatever state you're in, you should reach out to him because maybe Brian, you need good contractors to get work done.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to. Matter of fact, if we did another conversion of an apartment deal, I would love to partner with a contractor and both put up the money and let them put up their expertise, let me put up my financial analysis and lending it. I can go to any kind of lender. Love to have a partner who's got skin in the game who can also handle the construction side, because we did buy off a little bit more than we could chew in terms of staffing. We understand the construction process, and having this staff to deal with that is a different story because we're geared up to manage property, not necessarily get knee deep on construction.
With that conversion that you did where you bought I think you said it was a Motel 6 and you turned it into something.
It was an extended stay. It was an unbranded extended stay.
Okay. And you bought it for a certain dollar amount, but you mentioned you put almost as much into the construction. So think about that, contractors. Like, you can buy the asset, but you have a much better price on getting the work done than somebody like Brian, because, he's not a contracting expert. He yes, oversees and manages contractors, but as a contractor, we should be investing in deals because we know how to cut expenses and get subs for the price we need them to be at. Where a lot of times I would assume, Brian, you're going directly to a GC, and the GC is like us. They have a bunch of subs in their back pocket. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And just to make, I wish I could say that that was our project. We actually represented a client on that acquisition and rehab, where we became a management company. So I wish that was mine, but that is in our wheelhouse to do it. One of the reasons why we took that project is because we had long thought about some of these extended stays being converted. And we're looking at some office product to maybe convert to apartments, as well as just, I don't have to tell anybody on this podcast that construction costs have really pushed feasibility to the point of where you got to really question whether or not it's sustainable. But yeah, let's just pretend that it's a normal market. If we were able to tackle a project like that again, and we were definitely the owner, then we would love to bring in a construction partner, because you're right. I mean, there are a lot of things that that construction partner is going to be able to bring to the table that we necessarily can't. But for the sake of the partnership and for sake of the project, we want someone's expertise on that. And that comes back to due diligence too. The due diligence on these type projects is, you can never do enough. I mean, it's hard to build a construction budget. That's why a lot of people, and again, people on this podcast know, a lot of times people just tear stuff down and rebuild new, because it's a lot more predictable to build new than it is to completely retrofit.
Yeah. So you personally, you've had success along the years, and you've built a portfolio aside from your business, managing everything you're managing. What does that portfolio look like for you and your family? I'm always curious of what I should, because it helps me level up. What does your personal portfolio look like?
I have a lot of my money tied up into whole life policies. I do put money into my whole life policies, which if you had told me 5 years ago I'd be doing that, I'd say you're crazy. But if you don't want to hear it, go read What Would the Rockefellers Do, and you go talk to a Northwestern agent or any financial advisor can. So, and the reason why I've invested some in my life insurance policies, number one, I've had the cash. Number two, being in real estate and having a lot of debt and having illiquid assets, I always worry about my family liquidity if something were to happen to me. And unfortunately, I don't care how much equity you have, you can't spend equity. And if you want to know, and I don't care what you're worth, but when you need cash and you can't get it, that's not a great position to be in. So I always make sure I hold a certain amount in cash. And we do invest in some securities and other, stocks and bonds. I would not say we have a whole lot in that, but the rest is completely into real estate, commercial and residential land, and that sort of thing. It's kind of spread out. Most of it is income producing real estate.
Okay. Would you say you have this one has 20%, real estate is X percent?
Yeah, real estate.
Life insurance is X percent.
Yeah, real estate is 70%, I would guess. I mean, I'm definitely having weighted into real estate. I'd say cash, another 15%, and then securities, another 15%, just following it off the cuff.
That's cool. I listened to Tony Robbins' episode recently, and he was talking to some financial guru. And although I'm not there, he was saying, 20%, 20, and you divvied up into cash and commodities or stocks, and then self-directed life insurance and so on and so forth. And my wife was like, we should consider that. And so we're heavy in real estate as well as self-directed life insurance. I'm always just curious about different people's portfolios.
Yeah, and I want to add one more thing to that, just because I deal a lot in distressed real estate. I've acquired a lot of distress. I also represent a lot of the banks and special servicers, and I'm just telling you right now, it seems like a lot of people that fall in distress didn't fall into distress because they didn't have equity in the project, because they lacked cash. And I learned back in the 2008, 9, and 10 era that you can never have enough cash, and that markets will always bounce back. As whether or not you'll have enough liquidity to withstand that. And anyone listening to this podcast, whether you're in real estate or construction, that. I mean, liquidity is everything.
People fall into distress because they don't have enough cash. Dropping bombs over here, Brian. Now, I'm curious if you could also share a couple more lessons that you learned going through the 2007-8 crash, because obviously we're going through some tough times right now. They're not like that, but it's different. What are some lessons that you derive from that scenario, and how we can utilize or benefit from those moving forward with the times we're facing?
Sure. I think first and foremost is to really watch what kind of financing you have. Kind of like the liquidity comment that I made just a minute ago. A lot of people also have the wrong financing in place with their certain projects. And I fall into that trap too. What I mean by that is, if you're buying a shopping center and you've got a 5-year term on your loan, because in a lot of times in your commercial base, not just commercial property, but you go to your local banks, you're going to have a 5 or 7 year call on your loan. you got to make sure that your largest tenant or your second largest tenant doesn't have a 5-year expiration. So in other words, they're expiring at the same time your loan's expiring. I mean, you're just asking for just a recipe for disaster. So you want to make sure that the loan product that you have kind of matches the property that you're buying. If you're buying a multifamily or self-storage or anything like that, where no one tenant really is heavy on your rent roll or anything, then that's okay. But if you're buying office and you're buying industrial or retail, usually you have a tenant that's larger than any of the others. And sometimes what we call a junior anchor, you may have your second largest tenant. So just make sure that those leases don't expire really close to the time that your financing expires, or your loan term, because that makes it hard to renew your loan if that tenant either vacates or won't commit to a long-term lease.
Interesting. Okay. Now let's change gears a little bit, talking about for contractors who want to become more efficient. They want to become an owner instead of an operator, and they're trying to grow. What are techniques or strategies that you have done to streamline your daily operations?
Well, I'm still trying, by the way. And I do actually lead a GoPod of people where we talk about, it's called exiting the day-to-day operations. And so I do lead that, not because I've got it all figured out. It's because this topic has always been interesting. And I try this, all the time. We're kind of going back to the table of how, I could take one more toe or one more foot out of the business. And that's essential to grow. So the first and foremost, you got to have a darn good executive assistant. If you're an owner of a company, and you're asking yourself, what's the difference between an assistant and an executive assistant? That's probably some of the problem. A good executive assistant can do a lot of the things that you're currently doing. That maybe somebody that's got some good people skills, but doesn't really understand your business or understand all the things that you're into. I have an executive assistant. She probably is the only person outside of my wife that has seen every financial statement, every tax return, everything. I mean, I give everything to her to handle and to send to my CPA. And so I had to kind of get over that initial shock of, man, I mean, she knows more about me than maybe I do. So I'm sure she's seen my net worth statement because she's corrected it and sent it to bankers. And so, but that is the first and foremost spot you got to have. I mean, you really, there's a saying out there, and my coach says it, but this came from somebody else. But if you don't have an assistant, then you are one. And I would refer to, if you don't have a good assistant, then you are that good assistant. You really need somebody that can take a lot of the mundane, routine things off of your plate. And that includes managing your email account. Because I found when I really did a deep dive of where the bottlenecks were in the company, well, they were for me. And a lot of times people email me things, and a lot of times it was people just emailed me to want to know where something was, or, hey, a banker, hey, can you send me your financial statements on this project? And so much of that stuff, a good assistant can just go ahead and be proactive when I'm out looking at property or I'm out doing a podcast or whatever. That stuff can be done. It doesn't really require me to do it. So that's first. And then secondly, if you're beyond that point and you're really growing, then think about an operations director. Everybody wants to immediately step out of a company and go hire a company president. And I always tell people that should really be the last thing, should be the last phase of it. But secondly, to hiring a really, really good executive assistant, I would focus on hiring a really good operations person. And if you've never read the book Rocket Fuel, order it today on Amazon. It'll be you'll probably be at your house or your office or whatever in just a couple of days. And it doesn't mean that you have to go hire a partner necessarily, but the Rocket Fuel book, in my mind, explains so well that there's somebody better than you to run your company. There you go. Traction. Yeah. Gino Wick. Now, all those guys.
Dude, oh my God.
Yeah.
Rocket Fuel, Traction. Like, I'm dissecting this stuff right here. And I would have never heard about this if I didn't join a mastermind. And,
absolutely. Yeah.
And it's helped me go from stressed out in the field, chasing storms, dealing with homeowners, trying to collect money, to now living my dreams in Costa Rica, showing up to a 15-minute meeting in the morning and 2 vision talks on Tuesday and Thursday, and making more money than ever because of the book you just mentioned.
Yeah.
What was it? Traction and the other one?
Now you stopped me. I just said it. Go back. Hey, go back.
Get a grip or something. Get a grip or...
Yeah. Now,
Gino Wickman. Buy all the Gino Wickman books.
with Rocket Fuel was the one we were talking about. But in 20 years ago, I didn't know what was wrong with me. Not that there was, but I knew that every time I was in the office, man, my creativity would just die. I mean, just died. I mean, all the things that were going on. And one of the things about what these books do is it teaches you that there's somebody out there who's the visionary, right? There's somebody out there, and I would classify, and I think a lot of business owners are visionary, but there are just as many people out there who are not visionaries, who have a lot to bring to the table. And those people can run your operation while you're out, making it rain, right? I'm the business development guy. I like going out whale hunting, hunting for the big investors or the big opportunities or the big clients. And I love doing that. But there's just as many people out there, they're part of the process is running the operations, and they really enjoy coming to the office every day and dealing with human resource problems and dealing with making sure that this person is, their scope of their responsibilities are being met. And there are people out there who are like that, and it's hard for me to imagine, but there are, and you've got to go find that person. So if you don't want to be in the operations, then either you need a partner or you need to go hire a director of operation who that is their thing, and they're out there.
And would you consider the director of operations the integrator?
Absolutely. No question. Absolutely.
Okay. I love that. What does your integrator do?
First and foremost, he handles a lot of the things that I don't want to handle, and he's just better at administrative responsibilities than I am. And we don't call him an integrator. He's honestly just a director of operations for me. And he's also my lead commercial property manager. So he kind of runs our management division. So naturally, just by de facto, he's a better administrator than I am.
So we got hire a damn good executive assistant to overcome bottlenecks, hire a director of operation, AKA the integrator. What else we got?
And the third, obviously, would be the next phase is if you really, truly want to exit the company and you really want to be more passive, then I think you've got to look at someone who will step into that president's role and really run the company, which a lot of times could be the number 2 guy, could be, whoever. But there's certainly a lot more challenges to that, right? Because if you completely remove yourself, then who's going to do the business development? Who's going to go do the client acquisition work? And every business and every industry is different, but I found through doing this GoPod that it's really not. I mean, all these businesses have the same challenges. What we do in the business is different, So those are kind of so when someone talks about, hey, I want to kind of be more passive in a business, or hey, I want to improve our operations, those are the 3 key components that you got to think about. And don't be scared to go out and hire a business coach. Man, I have been through strategic coach. I've been through the Massimo coaching, which is very specific to the commercial real estate industry. I now have a coach that I got through Abundance. There are so many darn good business coaches and coaching programs out there. Don't be scared to invest in yourself, because those coaches will also really help you, and they'll also tell you when you're the bottleneck. And I'll be honest with you, I can just about tell you that just about every single one of us listen to this podcast or on this podcast, including myself, we're the stumbling block. We are the bottlenecks because a lot of responsibilities fall on us, but we're out there chasing deals and we're out there, chasing opportunities, which is really what we should be doing. That's the gift that we have. But if we've not properly vetted the whole process of how your business or how this could operate, then and unfortunately we tend to be the bottlenecks in this whole organization.
Love this. That's some good information. So now we do our rapid fire rounds.
Sure.
I have several questions for you. What is your superpower?
Oh, wow. I will say finding opportunities. I envision. I mean, I know everybody probably claims to have great vision, but I can see things in the future, and I'm not talking about premonition. like I can see opportunities in the future, just listening to the news and I can come back from a conference and realize, hey, this is where I think the next opportunity is going to be, because there's too many people chasing this. There's too many people chasing that. And so I think I have very good vision based on kind of where the things are today. I feel like I see where the problems are going to be tomorrow. So again, I see those problems as opportunities.
What's the number one role of a CEO of a company?
I don't think there's any doubt is to set the expectation and the vision of the company. And I think, not just trying to use vision again, but I think it's not just having the vision, it's communicating that vision through goals. And I think that is the number one job. I don't think there should be anybody in the company that doesn't know where that company is headed and what's their 1 and their 3 year goals. Maybe 5 years is a long way out, but you can certainly say this year, by the end of this year, this is what we want to accomplish. And everybody, what part does every person in that organization have to achieve those goals?
Of that. Have you done the VTO from Traction, like filled out all the forms and had your team go over it?
It's been probably 3 years, 4 years since I've done it, and I've never really adopted the EOS system. I have put some good procedures and policies in place. I am being coached right now, and so we're kind of using his method. I'm not against the EOS. We've just never have done that. But I have talked to a lot of other people that have implemented that EOS, and they swear.
Yeah, that's what we're starting to implement. It's been a game changer for my business and life. So what process do you have in place to regularly win large deals?
Research. I know that doesn't sound fun at all. And I wouldn't say it was a process, but I do a lot of research on people. And that allows me, when I make that call or I approach someone about new business, I've got a lot of information to share with them, or I feel like I know what their pain points are, or I feel like I give myself a better than 50% chance of being successful because of it.
What characteristic or habit do you have or instill that makes you so successful?
Oh, wow. I would say that I am definitely a morning person. So I did the Miracle Morning for a little while. That's another great book if you've never read it. Even though I don't do the Miracle Morning 100% every morning, I have a morning routine, and I just don't feel the same unless that morning routine is done. I mean, when we go out of town, I still wake up at the exact same time when I'm out of town. I just go do everything sitting at a breakfast on the beach, maybe somewhere. But yeah.
Yes. Miracle Morning is one of the all-time best books ever written. Hal Elrod and I sold Cut Coaching together. And back in the day, he's a legend in his own right. He teaches people how to, the principles the most successful people do. And he has an acronym called SAVERS: silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing or writing. And I'm a firm believer in that too, man. Every day I do it and I live by it. And the days I don't do it, you can just feel like your cup is not filled, right?
Now, and what it really does is that it gets you on such a good morning routine. You win the morning. I mean, get that exercise, getting the reading in. I always have that 10 by 10. And I try to do as many of my top 10 items by 10 o'clock. And the things that I don't do, I delegate. And it just feels good. If I don't do that, it just seems like the day just gets away from me. And everybody's gonna, you're gonna do the Miracle Morning for a little while, and you're gonna feel great, and then you're gonna adjust to kind of what works for you. And that's kind of what I've done. But at the end of the day, when I'm off, it just there's no doubt I'm not as productive.
Can you elaborate a little bit more? I don't remember learning that 10 by 10.
That was my deal. I decided that one of the things that I wanted to do is to decide on the top 10 things and have 3 of those top 10 done by 10 o'clock in the morning. And anything else that I couldn't do, I delegate.
Wow. Oh my God. That is so good. So
good. I may have stolen that from Gary's, if it went on the one thing.
Yeah. I've heard it before, but I needed to hear something simple. Yeah. And I think
it may have been in the, anyway, but one of the guys And I'm going to tell you something, one of the things you'll learn about what you do and some of the things, it'll just be a culmination of a lot of things when you read. I mean, I always pull 3 or 4 nuggets out of every book I read. And I think I learned that. I think Gary Keller said that either in One Thing or The Millionaire Real Estate Investor.
It's anything. All these successful guys that I interview, they all have one thing in common. They read a lot. And thank you for putting that.
3 or 4 books a month. And that came out of a lot of that Miracle Morning too. I was always a little bit of a reader, but once I read the Miracle Morning and reading for 30 minutes became part of what I did every morning. It's amazing how many books you can read.
I love that. What's the best process that you have in your business? Explain how it works and the benefits it brings you.
Oh, man. Well, number one, I'm not much of a process person, but one of the things that I did that I think is game changing for me and it kind of gives me a get out of jail free card. I created an employee tools and resources folder within our Dropbox. We use Dropbox as our, file management and all that. And I use that employee tool of resources for like market reports, for opportunities, for things my employees and my agents and my investors should read. And some of it is very specific to like contracts and forms and letter of intents. But a lot of it is like, hey, here, I downloaded this book you've got to read, or whatever. And so I put a lot of that stuff in there. So anytime one of my agents or employees or whatever comes to me and says, hey, what books do you recommend? It's like, have you not gone to employee tools and resources? Because anything that I think you guys should do, I'm putting in that file. And it's marked books to read, or it's marked market reports you should watch or read while you're flying or on an airplane or whatever. And it's just my way to communicate downward to a lot of people within our organizations. And now, but unfortunately, people are lazy in general, right? I think a lot of people are. And so even though I spend a lot of time and energy and effort putting a lot of that stuff in that folder, a lot of people still don't get in there and read it or whatever. But in my mind, that's my way to communicate with people without them having to ask.
I absolutely love that. Have a good system in place that people can go to and learn from instead of you always having to teach. You have it documented. Hey, go to this section in, like for us, it's the Flagstone Roofing Way where there's multiple sections and everybody knows what to do. If somebody quits tomorrow, we can, boom, give that new person, their SOPs. My final question, best tip you can give to an owner of a construction company who's leading a team and wants to leave a legacy?
Ooh, wow. That's a good, number one, I think succession planning, I think it's going to be key. And maybe that's not lead a legacy, but obviously the company could be your legacy. I would think, I think also too is to get a little bit more into the personal lives of your people. What's going on. I think employees remember that. I think as you fade away, and it doesn't mean that you're off dying somewhere. It could be that you're starting other businesses or complementary businesses to the construction industry, like investing in real estate. But if you want to leave your legacy, I think the right succession planning is key, and people that they've worked hard and at your company have opportunities to succeed within themselves. I think that's key, and I'm very much a meritocracy type of person and environment. That's kind of the culture of our company, is that we love growth oriented people, and I gravitate to growth oriented people, and consequently I don't when someone's not growth oriented. I can only manage people for so long, and I just lose interest, being honest. But when someone who's growth oriented, someone who really wants to expand themselves, I will unfortunately probably spend more time than I need to, because I just gravitate to people like that. So I know I kind of got off your question, but I would say succession planning and making sure that you're spending time with the people that are growth oriented, who are going to take your company that you've built to the next phase. And I think that is your legacy to some degree.
Brian Estes with the Estus Group, very successful. I thoroughly appreciate your time today. And if somebody wants to reach out to you, whether it be a syndication deal or they need your services or they want to work with you as a contractor on future projects, what's the best way for them to connect?
Well, I'll leave my cell phone and my email address. Email's probably the best way to get me, but don't feel like you can't reach out by cell phone. Unfortunately, when you're an agent and been an agent as long as I have, as well as an investor, I mean, my cell phone number's out everywhere, so there's no way people can't get a hold of me. But it's 601-906-8999. Email is Brian, BRIAN, at Estus, ESTES Group, GROUP.net, NET.
Love that, Brian.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the Real Construction Owners podcast today. Have a good day, brother.
Thank you for the invitation, man. I'd love to do it again.